What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian is here. It was a big one, and we're here to talk about it. I had heard that this episode was really good because it was shown to a few people at Star Wars Celebration over the weekend, or late last week, and they were not lying. This was an outstanding episode, and it sets us up for a very interesting finish next week, so let's go ahead and get into it. The episode starts off on Coruscant with Elia Kane walking through the streets, and she meets up with this Imperial droid who shows a projection of Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon escaped from the custody of the New Republic, as we learned a couple of episodes ago, and here he learns of a report that Navarro was protected from the pirates by a group of Mandalorians led by both Din Djarin and Bo-Katan Kryze. And his initial reaction to that is that it's not possible because their factions are sworn enemies, which they used to be, but as we've seen over the last few episodes, that's no longer the case. Bo-Katan has united the various Mandalorian tribes, and that group is actually added onto in this episode as we find out that there were survivors on Mandalore as well who team up with Bo-Katan to strengthen their forces in this episode. Moff Gideon then attends a meeting with the Shadow Council of the Empire. There's mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn and how his return will aid in the resurgence of the Empire. A big question that comes out of this meeting is, how do these people know that Thrawn's going to return at all? Obviously, previous episodes of The Mandalorian and the conclusion of Star Wars Rebels do set up Thrawn's return and let us know that he is probably alive, and in the Ahsoka trailer that just came out last week, we did see that he is alive and he will be in the Ahsoka series, but I'm wondering how these people know that he's alive since he has not made his return yet. But nonetheless, Thrawn is alive, his return is set up, and I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see him in the next episode of The Mandalorian, which will be the season finale, but regardless of whether that happens, he will be in the Ahsoka series and likely be the prominent villain. Also attending this meeting is Brendol Hux, who is the father of General Hux, Armitage Hux from the sequel trilogy, so that was a cool little Easter egg. And then the biggest part of this meeting is Moff Gideon revealing that he believes the Mandalorians are preparing to retake Mandalore, and the Mandalorians would be a great threat to the Empire if they do return in full force, so the Council agrees that they need to take care of the Mandalorians and wipe them out once and for all. So then we flip to Navarro, and Bo-Katan's group of Mandalorians that she went and recruited in the last episode has come to join Din Djarin's covert on Navarro. And here, once they've all settled in a little bit, Bo-Katan gives a speech and she asks for support as she tries to reclaim Mandalore. And after Din Djarin is the first one to step up along with Grogu, the rest of the volunteers begin to trickle in, and Bo-Katan amasses an army to go to Mandalore. Also, while we're on Navarro, Din Djarin goes to see Greef Karga, and Greef reveals that the Anzellans have rebuilt IG-11, who is now IG-12, and he requires a pilot basically to control his actions and his speech, and there's a little slot for Grogu to fit into, and so Grogu is now controlling IG-12, and there were some funny moments as Grogu walked through the streets on Navarro and he's trying to take food from people and he kept clicking the buttons that say yes, 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 and that was a pretty funny thing to watch. And then he also breaks up that fight between Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves later in the episode, at which point Bo-Katan says, "You've trained your apprentice well," to Din Djarin, and Din's like, "I didn't teach him that." And I think that was sort of a little subtle nod to Grogu's past as a Jedi, maybe his time with Luke, maybe his time before Luke, maybe both, but Grogu is maintaining peace among the Mandalorians, and that's obviously something that the Jedi are big on. That's pretty much their purpose in the galaxy. So I liked to see that. But now, since we're talking about it, we find ourselves on Mandalore, and this is where Bo-Katan's army finds out that there were survivors on Mandalore as well. She reveals what happened in the past and how Moff Gideon got the Darksaber. She tells the other Mandalorians that she did surrender in order to try and save her people, but Moff Gideon essentially stabbed her in the back. He took the Darksaber and he continued to destroy the Mandalorian people and try to wipe them out of the galaxy. Din Djarin comes up to Bo-Katan after that and he's like, "I didn't know any of this about you. I'm sorry. We've always been taught that essentially everything that happened was your fault, and I see that that's not the case now, and I serve you until the end, basically, until your song is written." And that was a really nice moment, I thought. So then the Armorer takes the injured Mandalorians who they found on Mandalore who can't assist in their effort to take the Forge, and she takes them back to the ships that are hovering above the planet for medical treatment. And as the group who stayed on Mandalore approach the Forge, there's this big monster that emerges from the rubble. I don't know what that was supposed to be. My initial thought was that it could be a mythosaur, but I don't really think that was the case. Maybe it was, I don't know. But the Mandalorians make it down into the Great Forge, and they're ambushed by Imperial troopers. These are the next phase of the Death Troopers, as Moff Gideon explains a bit later on. They have jetpacks, and they are armed in Mandalorian Beskar. The Mandalorians are better, more effective warriors than these Imperial troopers, but because they were set up and it's an ambush, they separate Din Djarin from the rest of the group, they take him away, and Bo-Katan uses the Darksaber to escape Moff Gideon, and to help the rest of the Mandalorians escape as well, but Paz Vizsla stays behind, and he sacrifices himself to save the rest of the Mandalorians, and he ends up taking this entire platoon of troopers out, but then 3 Praetorian guards, requested by Moff Gideon to protect him, arrive to finish off Paz Vizsla. He puts up a little fight, but he's taken out pretty easily, which I think makes sense, and although it's sad to see him go, I assume he's probably dead. Maybe he'll come back though, we'll see. Obviously, he didn't like fall into a fire or something, so his death wasn't extremely definitive. He could come back, but regardless, I like seeing the Praetorian guards take a decisive win here, because it really shows you that characters like Rey and Kylo Ren, taking them out in The Last Jedi, requires a great amount of skill, and it's no small feat to fight these guys off. And so the episode closes out with Paz Vizsla probably dead, but I do think there's a chance that maybe they'll write him back into the story. If he does stay dead, then I would expect that there's probably going to be a scene in the next episode in which somebody returns to Navarro and they talk to his son, and they have to tell him that his father died fighting on Mandalore, which will obviously be sad. Now, going into the next episode, Moff Gideon ordered that the TIE fighters and TIE bombers go attack the Mandalorian fleet, so I would expect that we're going to open up right there and there's going to be a battle. Most of the Mandalorians, including Bo-Katan, obviously did escape this episode, so there's probably going to be a confrontation between Moff Gideon and Bo-Katan, because Moff Gideon still wants the Darksaber, and because the Empire has captured Din Djarin, and obviously the Mandalorians aren't going to leave him behind. So we shall see what happens with that. This next episode is probably going to be very action-packed. We'll see if anybody else shows up to aid the Mandalorians, or to aid the Empire for that matter. I think Grogu is probably going to get some moments to shine in this next episode as he fights to get Din Djarin back. He's probably going to use the Force and do some things with IG-12, and so we'll really get to see some of Grogu's Jedi power on display. Obviously, we'll probably see Bo-Katan fighting with the Darksaber. I'm really hoping that both Bo-Katan and Din Djarin make it out of this next episode alive and head into Season 4 with both of them still surviving. I'd be shocked if Din Djarin died. I don't really think there's any chance that that's going to happen, but Bo-Katan, I do feel like there's a small chance that she could go, and I really hope that doesn't happen, because I've really been enjoying watching her in this season, and I like the trio of her, Grogu, and Din Djarin working together, so fingers crossed for her to stay alive. But again, time will tell. This is going to get very dicey. This is a clash of 2 really powerful and determined forces, so like I said, we are primed for a really exciting battle here in the finale of Season 3. But let me know what you guys thought about this episode down below. Let me know what your predictions are for the finale. Again, I thought this episode was outstanding. I really enjoyed it. I was glued to the screen every second, and I cannot wait to see how they close this season out. I'm half expecting them to do something with Thrawn or maybe Sabine or something to set up the Ahsoka series, so maybe we could see like some rebels show up to try and wipe out the Imperial remnant that's here fighting on Mandalore. That could make sense. We have seen the New Republic here and there, and obviously they know Moff Gideon escaped, so that could definitely go down. There's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of possibilities heading into the finale, but we only have another week to wait now, so I'm going to close this video out here. Again, let me know what your guys' predictions are for the finale. Let me know what you would like to see. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, remember, the Force will be with you always.